So thank you once again for joining us. And this is our second webinar. We had our launch webinar a couple of weeks ago. So today it's all about answering your questions. Hopefully you're busy preparing your applications. So we really look forward to getting into the nitty-gritty details in a moment. So I have to just say that this webinar is being recorded. So please do be aware of that. Today, we're going to have a short recap of what the BioFAIR Fellowship Program is, and then really we're going to go into Q&As. If you have any questions, please do type them into the chat. I believe you can also raise your hand if you did want to kind of speak it out, but we will try and get through as many of them as possible before the end of the session. And if some of your colleagues were not able to attend today and they wanted to hear more, a recording of this will be made available on our website. So please do go to the BioFAIR website and click on opportunities, and you should be able to see all the details of the fellowship, including, of course, the recording from our launch webinar, where we had Tony and myself go into what the BioFAIR Fellowship Program is, what sorts of candidates we're looking for this year, how to apply, and how to sort of align your work in the year of your fellowship to best drive forward all of BioFAIR's missions. So please do take a look at that as well. So I'm very, very pleased to say that in addition to myself, I think many of you have seen and heard from me before. I'm Nishadi De Silva. I'm the Senior Technical Project Manager for BioFAIR. And you've also seen Ed, who's handling all the logistics for this call. But in addition to the two of us, we've got three of our fellows on this call. So in a moment, I'm going to hand over to them to give a short introduction about themselves and what this year has meant in their work and what it means to spend 20% of their time advocating for fair practice all across the UK. So we've got Jean-Marie today with us, Evan and Robert Andrews. And I'm going to now stop sharing in just a moment, actually. So they're each going to give a short introduction to themselves, and then we can dive into questions, and I may bring back my slides, or we could just chat without the slides based on what fits best. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to pass over to Jean-Marie.
Oh, hello, thanks, Nishali. So I'm Jean-Marie Burel. I'm based at the University of Dundee, and my primary focus or domain of expertise is more in the imaging world, and the BioFAIR Fellowship has been great for me in order in many aspects. One, I think, is to reach out to other scientific domain, because as we know, we need expertise from everywhere. I met, like, for example, Robert and Evan and other that are focusing on completely different topic, and that has created a lot of dynamic on my side and interest, and that's where the fellowship has been great in that respect. So I would be, and also it had allowed me to work again with some community I was involved previously in as part of EOSC Life project, one more European project, and BioFAIR with all the endeavor of connecting one of the endeavor is to connect all those community, has allowed me to reach out and rejoin regular meeting and work together towards a common goal of bringing fair practice into the UK. Things that have been more not done, but started elsewhere, and it's been very, very inspiring to meet all those groups, and scientifically also very productive. So to pass it to Evan.
Yes, we're kind of working down the map of
Okay, that's what I thought. So
UK.
Evan,
And what's
so
quite
I'm north. Yeah,
of course, and you are northmost. And what's quite fascinating with the three of you joining is that we're representing Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And finally, we don't have a representative from England. So I guess that'll have to be Ed and myself. So Evan, over to you.
So yeah, hi, I'm Evan, Evan Trundle. I'm a BioFAIR fellow and postdoctoral research fellow at Queen's University Belfast. I primarily research genomics, but with an interest in FAIR data and pipelines through my research. And so becoming a BioFAIR fellow gave me the opportunity to uh, develop that expertise further, as well as gain exposure to various communities and workshops. So, for example, I through BioFair, I facilitated a workshop with AI Bio UK. Um, but in general, the time from the fellowship has helped me with community development at Queen's, which has led to a successful Elixir UK membership application. And yeah, I think becoming part of a BioFair Fellow has helped me um, with regards to advancing both my research interests and the community aspects, which are important in this area.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And Robert, did you have anything to add to that?
Can you hear me? My computer's going at the moment. You can hear me? Great.
Yes, we can hear you. And we can't hear the
So,
chat, so
oh, I can. So, hello everyone. I'm Robert. I'm based at Cardiff University. So, I would call myself a bioinformatician. So, I do half analysis of data and half data stewardship, and do a lot of teaching around this as well. So, I mostly work with sequencing data and then sort of assay data within the within the School of Medicine. So the fellowship work I'd done this year was really about putting the FAIR principles into practice. So I've written two pieces, two user journeys around FAIR, and partnered with a biologist who was getting sequencing done from a company, and we documented how they went through how to verify the data, but also how to verify its analysis as well. So really having a common scenario, a piece of work which actually shows people what FAIR is in practice. What have I've enjoyed? I've really enjoyed making the relationships with other fellows. I think a really important thing to me, particularly within the work, is that you have points of contact just to ask the quick questions for. And it's been really good sort of meeting kind of the diversity, but there seems to be someone that knows something about everything within the life science sphere, and that's really powerful. From a point of view of an RTP, I'm an RTP. This is a really nice opportunity for RTPs, although not exclusively, and for RTPs. RTP leadership is pretty rare, and I've been privy to a number of initiatives, and I think this is one of the best. So nothing really performative here. There are real opportunities that come to us, and it's our decision whether we take them or not. So um, for there's opportunities to lead for those people that don't really want to lead but influence people in different ways through conversations and then their communities. There's absolutely opportunities to do this. Thank you.
I think that sounds brilliant, and I hope that's giving you some ideas into the sorts of things that you could be working on in the next 12 months. Just want to remind you, if you did have any questions about your applications, type them into your Q&A box. Someone has mentioned the chat box. I think this has been disabled, but we can see your Q&As as they come in. And I think what I'll do is I'll just carry on just a few more slides, and then we'll come back. Brilliant. So thank you very much. I hope you can all see that again. Just moving through. Do remember there's lots of benefits to becoming a BioFAIR Fellow in terms of sort of improving your own skills, expanding your peer group, but also on a national platform, leading this culture change and supporting research in a way that sometimes is not possible when you're sort of in your own research team and you feel like you're just one, but collectively as part of BioFAIR, you do have this platform to kind of have your voice heard. So that I hope that's encouragement enough to draw you into the BioFAIR Fellowship Program. So I am going to just do a quick check with Ed to see how many questions we have. And
we have 4 questions coming in currently, and looks like some more on the way.
Okay, brilliant. So I will stop sharing and we can perhaps go to them. The slides I had were more on process and how to apply and how we shall be assessing your applications. So let me stop sharing and then we can go to your questions. Right, I did, okay. I can read. So we have a question here on, I have a question about the narrative CV. Are you looking to see only work that can be related to data management fair openness, or do you also want to see the applicant's broad experience? I can take this one, and if the 3 fellows have anything to add on what they did last time, I'd appreciate your feedback. So I would say, as stated in the sort of the application format that we sent, try and target your text to really focus on the types of experiences that would bolster your fellowship year, as you would do for any sort of job application. But within the broader context of your career, if there are other things that you wanted to include that you felt were relevant, please by means do this. The assessment will be done really answering the question of would you be able to deliver the work that you proposed in your application, given the experience that you have mentioned to us. Robert or Jean-Marie, Evan, did you have to battle with this last year as you were applying?
No, I think you said, Nishadi, exactly what I did, which is that you kind of evidence that you can do the piece of work that you've actually spoken about. So a lot of this is going to be around technical. But then a lot of it is around knowing what your community is that you're going to be working with, or the groups that you're going to be working with, and just showing evidence that you know they are, that you worked with them before, that there's other initiatives. I mean, I spoke about some of the stuff I did within Cardiff University around software and around data stewardship, and that kind of bolstered some of the stuff that I wanted to do as well. So yeah, there's some of the technical stuff, but there's also the community stuff as well.
Jean-Marie?
Yeah, I will concur with Robert. I think there is aspect of your demonstrating your necessarily also your skill, what you can bring, because in my application I had an initial plan of work, and then you have discussion meeting with other group, and your initial plan morph into potentially something slightly different that will be more beneficial than just your community. You engage and say, okay, actually if I adjust my initial plan because I've demonstrated my skill, I can actually embark in that different journey. And I think that's as Robert said, almost show what you can do, but don't only necessarily just focus on, yeah, I can produce A and B, and then, but if C come along, demonstrate that actually you could easily switch to C. That's how I think it's a very important. What I found during that fellowship was I think Roberto and Evan indicated that is the human aspect has been very important from my side, and like I've interacted quite a lot with Robert on things that I didn't know Robert before, and actually we have found a lot of common ground in terms of our journey and in discussion, and has been quite important. And that's also directed of sometimes my way of thinking of the work that has been produced during that fellowship. So I think because we have the similar skill set, similar interest and skills, that we can broaden that into a certain direction. So it's important to highlight those facts and just not saying I can do X, Y, and Z. in terms of a concrete plan of action, if I'm made clearer.
Yeah, I think that's all good advice, and I hope that helped. We're going to move on now to question 2, which is what balance are you looking for between community engagement and producing practical outputs? These can be guidance, mappings, case studies, training materials. They're excellent question, and I would say this depends on the community that you're working with. So in the fellowship that we've had in the 12 months prior to this, there were some communities, actually the most important thing to do there was just to raise awareness and to introduce FAIR and to talk about the challenges. And so this meant that actually, producing practical outputs such as a useful workflow or training was not the most pertinent thing for that particular community. However, there were other fellows that did have, operational pieces of work that have now come out and gone into practical papers, and that was the way that they designed their fellowship. So it'll really depend on what you want to do and what is most practical for your community. So in terms of, think always along the 5 objectives of BioFAIR and how your work can propel those missions forward. I'm going to loop in Evan here because he did actually have sort of a tangible output alongside doing community corralling. So Evan, what was your expertise there?
Yeah, so yeah, I think it's good to propose things on sort of multiple axes. Just it kind of links to the previous question a bit. But yeah, in terms of being able to produce something, in my case, I produced a schema and eventually in progress a workflow called the Human AI Ledger, which basically attempts to track provenance. So it's a research-oriented work for human AI co-collaboration. Um, but that was a piece of work that came about because basically we had a discussion through BioFAIR. I was able to attend the Elixir UK All Hands, and they were talking about this issue with data provenance when students or researchers interact with AI LLM systems, and they basically, you don't know what the human did and what the AI did. So that was kind of what started that project. But anyway, so that's one interesting thing about the fellowship is that it can propose an idea that comes along as you're going, which maybe you wouldn't know that you had that idea when you first submit your proposal. So that maybe isn't exactly 100% helpful. But in that sense, one of my main goals was to kind of elevate the FAIR data scene in Northern Ireland. So
Yeah.
that was one of my main pushes in my application. And that was what led to a considerable part of my time in the early stages of the fellowship to coordinate and submit an Elixir UK application on behalf of the university, which was ultimately successful. But so I do think that, yeah, practical outputs such as GitHub repositories or uh, perhaps even Zenodo could also be helpful.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you so much, Evan. We're going to move to question 3, the third question that has put my way at least. What would distinguish an excellent application? This is a really hard question, by the way. What would distinguish an excellent application under the potential impact criterion? Is it breadth of reach, depth of change, reusable outputs, or influence on BioFAIR itself? This is hard to answer because all of these things are important. So indeed, as you'd have seen in some of the slides from the last webinar, our fellows have reached over 900 people. So just in very short time. So that's huge breadth of reach and coverage. And the hub does that as well. So there is something to be said about trying to reach a lot of people. But equally, there is also something to be said about the depth of change. Is it more worthwhile spending time changing the minds or views of a couple of people who are then going to be advocates for FAIR So there is something to be said about that. And it's difficult to answer this because it again depends on the maturity of the community that you're working with. I think reusable outputs would probably not be used as a measure to judge the excellence of an application. So the outputs per se, if you were going to, write some kind of data management practice guidelines or that kind of thing, while it's nice to have, I think the fellowship is really about the people commons and the culture change. So that wouldn't be held against you if you didn't have a reusable output as part of your work packages. And then the fourth thing is the influence on BioFAIR itself. And I would reword that almost as not so much influence, but the ability to co-create with BioFAIR. So the BioFAIR spokes are just starting to come online. Our Methods Commons is just beginning to build the early versions of the Methods Commons MVP. So it would be great to have some engagement there. So if you were able to sort of talk to your communities that BioFAIR is not able to reach and talk to them, understand their challenges and feed them back to BioFAIR. And equally take the news about BioFAIR back to these communities. That would be greatly beneficial. I know I haven't answered your question correct, perhaps in the way that you wanted me to, because you wanted me to pick one. But all I'm trying to say is all of these things are useful things to consider in an application. Anyone else on any more on that?
I can say something. I mean, I agree with Shadi in terms of breadth or depth, both are valid, and I would say in the application while you're doing this. I mean, the nice thing about the depth is you can always do that lighthouse. It's called a lighthouse project where you can actually go to the end and then demonstrate. If you really focus in on an area, you can actually get this sort of change. I would agree with in terms of outputs. I mean, this is maybe going off piste a bit, but I had a real conscious philosophy of not trying to build new things, but to reuse and customize a lot of what was there already. Because I mean, that's what a lot of FAIR is about anyway, reuse of data, reuse of software. But you can also look at reuse of training or reuse of something I've developed already that with this bit of money over the next 12 months, I can actually make into a national thing. So I think that's where I think the fellowship was very different for me, is there was product creation, but a lot was around how you got that out. So one of the phrases that people are talking about now, particularly with infrastructures, is that if you build it, they will come. And a lot of infrastructures are having difficulty now where things have been built, is trying to engage the community. And I think this is really how I see the BioFAIR People's Commons, is people out there that are working with the community and letting the community know what's actually out there. So that's where I think you can have a very excellent application, is that you start to consider that thing of not just the product, but how people start to use it as well.
Yeah, it's so true. We're going to move on to time, questions about splitting your time. And I'm going to ask our three fellows to talk about their own experiences, because that's better heard from them than myself. So outline how you plan to allocate the 0.2 FTE time across the duration of the program. Okay, so that was something we requested for. And the question is, do you want a breakdown of the time for proposed activities as percentages? What level of detail? I think, so I guess just to sort of set this into context, we as the BioFAIR Hub and the panel who will be reading your applications are very aware that things are, flexible. So things can change and evolve as the year goes forward. And as you heard from the three fellows, things can pivot as you learn more. But perhaps I'll give our fellows a chance to sort of explain what it looked like. What does 0.2 FTE in the context of your other jobs? How was that? Was that easy to balance? Did you have some weeks where, it was not so easy? Maybe I'll go back up to Scotland, John Marie.
Yeah, I saw it more like of allocated time. So some weeks you will probably do almost very little on BioFAIR as such, and say, okay. But I've always tried to allocate one day, even for some weeks you will do more work than other. For what I saw it more is offering you that flexibility and then space to actually achieve certain aim, like Evan was presenting a project, and Robert as well, is you have this time and that flexibility in your workload to say, okay, I am going to focus on presenting those, preparing those, gathering those material for a training, and that could take you a week, because you switching, it's difficult. Does it mean that you will completely for 5 weeks do nothing related to BioFAIR? Very unlikely. But it also help you to justify to your supervisor, say, can I allocate a piece of my time for those, to reach out to this community? As Robert said, it's a lot about communication, and that is hard to quantify in terms of if you do more software development. People might say, okay, how many bugs have you fixed? Have you answered those issues? And that the fellowship allowed you to have that a bit of bubble, protected bubble, that I see it, which have allowed me to achieve quite a lot of reaching out and like, as I said, I'm in imaging and then plant science, that are an institute near me that I've never been before, and then I've engaged with them, visited them, and it's a day visit. Does it mean that is my BioFAIR full day? Probably not, because I continue, and this is this protected time that I saw it much more, and which has been quite valuable to achieve those things that you would like to do when you have a bit more time, and then you never have that protected time, and it's able to justify that protected time. That is very important. And it also bringing BioFAIR, which is still fairly new to others. It's an important aspect, so people can then apply and start reusing the resources, etc. So I will personally find it difficult to say I'm going to only allocate that Monday for every week, because that's not going to scale, and I don't think any of the fellow have worked that way. Is it allows me to say, okay, I am going to dedicate that time for this, and that time might be more active certain time, certain period, but it's protected, and that's how I see it, that protected time. And I think also the team at BioFAIR team, like Nishadi and other, have been very understanding of that. We have to. Nishadi mentioned we have reached out to 900 plus people. We report things, but people are not saying, "Would you at your desk from 9 to 5 on Monday?" Because this is not going to be possible to work that way. And I think that's also been quite successful, that to offer that protected and freedom of the fellowship by that a bit that approach of reporting. So
yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. And I think I just want to sort of return to, I mean, you have asked if we wanted a breakdown of time for each of your proposed activities as percentages. You could do that. But, again, remember that this is only 20% of your time. So I think whichever way you do it, try to keep it within reasonable, your plans reasonable for the amount of time that you have. And whichever sort of way you present it to us, or we can leave that up to you. Certain amount of detail is useful to help us, judge if it's going to be feasible. But do remember there are lots of page limits on the application form, so you have to be quite creative in how you fit all that in. And I think just giving us a flavor of the sort of approach you take and the impact that it'll have that would be quite useful also. In addition, even if you choose to go into the very specific details, the top level overview would also be quite useful. Okay, moving on. Question 5. Okay. How narrowly defined do you expect the proposed area of focus to be at the application stage, given the 0.2 FTE allocation? I think this also sort of is relevant, I mean, to the previous question. I think try and keep your scope feasible. So if you can fit it within the time allocated, try and sort of design your efforts at a reasonable pace and designed to fit within the time that you have. It will also largely depend on where you are based. So if you are currently working with an organization or a community within your scientific domain, you might have easy access to these groups of people that you can do your community outreach and awareness. In other cases, your fellowship might be about finding that tribe and building that community. So then your effort and your area of focus will actually be quite different. So I think, it's difficult for me to give a sort of a broad answer that fits all applications, but just be mindful that it is a limited amount of time. And also this is part of the people commons. So the people aspect actually will take precedence. So do bear that in mind. Question 6, how many activities or sub-activities did the former fellows propose in their applications? Okay. I can't actually remember off the top of my head exactly sort of what sort of sub-activities you proposed, but this might be a great one for the fellows. So I'm going to pick on Robert and Evan and see, do you remember, do you feel that your application was sort of detailed enough, activities, sub-activities, and how did that link to your actual day-to-day of the fellowship? Maybe Evan first and then Robert.
Yeah. I mean, I think my application was quite detailed, but in terms of what happened when we began the fellowship, we actually had a kind of round table and discussed what sort of elements of our applications kind of co-belong or co-align with one another to start to build off of each other's initiatives. So I think in that sense that it's great to have a very specific idea, but be open for that idea to change.
Very good, yeah. I'm glad the selection day was useful in that way as well. Robert?
Yeah, I'd completely forgotten about that, Evan. The first event where we actually got together and we read each other's application, we went, oh, we're doing the same thing. Did actually change what we ended up doing. And I know my work ended up changing as to what I was going to be doing. So in terms of activities, I proposed training. In terms of activities, I proposed 2 training activities, but really it was about doing the activity and reusing training material rather than writing the training material again. There are activities that end up happening that you don't foresee, and I would actually say this is maybe the bulk of what actually ends up coming out, because within the fellowship itself, a lot of organizations will approach BioFAIR and ask if a fellow can be involved in a certain event, and this happened. There must have been at least 10, 15 of these, and I ended up doing something with the Forensic Science Service that I hadn't envisaged, which ends up being an activity you can have. You can actually be quite helpful in. But I think if you're looking for a list of things that people talked about, yeah, it was really around workshops. We're certainly in there, community building events, and training was in there as well.
Yeah, training. Definitely some fellows did surveys, lots of training around NF Core, Next for Practice. And just raising awareness. I mean, there was a huge sort of raising awareness component as well. And I think this feeds in nicely to the next question someone asks. How developed do the proposed external partnerships or communities need to be at this stage? The second part of that question is, are existing relationships sufficient, or do you need letters of firm commitments as part of the application? So just to answer the first one, I think you don't. I think so. You don't need letters of firm commitments. To be clear, there's only space for one letter of support. So and this also is optional, by the way, because we realize it does take a lot of time and effort to approach staff members for letters of support. If you choose to attach a letter of support, make sure that it is something very significant or relevant to your work and not a generic sort of, this person's great kind of letter. Because by the time you get to applying for a BioFAIR fellowship, we know you're already doing great stuff. So just to say, existing relationships are definitely sufficient. How developed do these relationships need to be? I think this is for you to decide. Again, this is a year-long program with a day a week sort of time commitment. If you have a dream of building a community and you know no one in that community, it will be a bit of an uphill struggle to assemble these members together. And it could take you well into your sixth or seventh month before you have some momentum going. So I would say it's probably more beneficial to have some people already willing to engage with your fellowship, either in your university or whichever sort of setting you are in at the moment. It doesn't have to be very large, but it'll be easy to get the ball rolling if you do have these communities in place. I'm willing to bet, actually, if you are interested in doing a fellowship, you are working in some domain where you're interacting with wet lab biologists or clinicians, and you're really seeing the need to be a fellow, to teach or raise awareness or bring people together. So I would imagine you have some ideas into what sort of communities you want to target. For the three fellows, were there any difficulties, or did you have to lean very heavily on anything besides your existing relationships to form communities?
Personally, no. But what he had allowed me to do is also to reach out to part of the community that has been usually siloed. As I said, I'm more in the imaging world, but the medical imaging is always a scary field because you have patient data, etc., that you tend not to you go with on your tippy toes there. And the fellowship, I attended several meetings, and that part as so you within even your community you might that allowed you to reach out I would say sub community or component of that community, and that lead to, I would say, the question 8 I can see around the Pathfinder project, because by doing that in the more medical part, I I've helped an application that has been successful for Pathfinder for a completely, because they were doing more medical. I exposed them to the Pathfinder appli call that was coming, and that found it interesting, and they have been successful. So that is very sometimes within your existing community by those type of relationship that would lead to other things. But at no point, I think none of us started from scratch. I think because as initially it takes time to also to build this part, but by communication you can still reach other subcomponent of your existing community.
Yeah.
It's quite even within one, it's can potentially being fragmented, and I've been now very involved into more plant imaging data. So that's another part that they also think they're different than the other one, and actually it's not. It's still the same kind of problem that people are facing, but it's bringing all those people together. It was a very interesting aspect.
Yeah. Very good. And just to also say on the flip side, I think, Evan, you had to kind of, really do a lot of community building in Northern Ireland, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Starting from scratch almost.
Not from scratch. There are, existing, but yeah, it's just, trying to link people together and get yeah, common ground. So I had existing contacts, but then also, yeah, plenty of new people I've met as well from, their networks. So then it's kind of grown into a larger network, which is exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say there will be plenty of support from the BioFAIR Hub, and in fact, even from the current fellows, if you did want some support building communities. And we are also working with various other teams who can provide some training on aspects of community building. So there are a lot of avenues to explore. And if you had any further questions, please do reach out. This leads me nicely on to the next question, which is, would being a successful fellow influence an application to a future Pathfinder, especially if they would overlap? So I'm going to say no. Perhaps other members of the BioFAIR Hub can disagree, but I do not think it would be sort of an influence. It's not to say, because I wouldn't want a successful fellow to naturally assume that the Pathfinder application that they were a part of was going to be successful. However, I do see that there could be useful overlap. You may well be a collaborator with some of your colleagues on a Pathfinder, simply because you would now then have insider knowledge into, how BioFAIR operates, and your work and your fellowship program can be really good at feeding requirements into a good Pathfinder application. There are also some rules around being double funded. I'm not the best person to speak about this, but if you did have specific questions, Eva, who's our project manager, will be excellent at answering them for you. So I'm going to leave it at that, and wish you all the best if you are applying for both fellowship and Pathfinder this year. So moving on now to the next question. Oh, sorry, John.
Sorry, I think it's one thing one thing that a few fellow have done is helping out in terms of application, in terms of not offering sometime guidance. I know Robert has, and other is just also helping from a technical standpoint.
Indeed.
Of what is available within, as you said initially, within BioFAIR. Either it could be upcoming resources or even just guidance of how to get those projects even be more included within the community. In my case, they were fairly isolated within the community engagements, and then they've been involved in more in the bioimaging UK part. So it's just helping them out. And I think the fellowship for that, you don't financially benefit from it as a monthly payment, etc. But you benefit from you and the recipient of the prize benefit from an awareness, and also how to build that sense of community, and that may lead to other projects together. And I think that's an aspect to is more thinking further in the future than just, okay, can I apply and can I get funding? It might probably, as you said, the answer probably would be difficult due to double funding, but it might be leading to other collaboration, which is also very important.
Yes, indeed. So moving to the next question. On the selection day, what are the assessment criteria for choosing successful applicants? So this is an excellent question, and I personally really loved our selection day last year. So by the time you get to the selection day, you have already been shortlisted. So the assessment criteria that is currently on our website, which shows you how your application form will be assessed, those criteria you would have already fulfilled those, and you kind of get to the next stage, which is the selection day. During the selection day, and I'm going to ask the fellows to jump in on this, you will be assigned sort of, what I hope are fun activities in the morning and in the afternoon. You will have opportunities to do some presentations and work collaboratively with the other candidates. And, it worked fantastic last year. So there'll be members of the panel sitting at various points in the rooms, and we will be looking at things like your communication skills and your ability to sort of negotiate, your ability to work together in teams, all the sorts of things that are really, really fantastic for fellows to have. It's a very, very fun day. And I would like to imagine that even those candidates who weren't successful at the selection stage actually were able to get a lot out of it, particularly connecting with fellow FAIR enthusiasts who they may not have been able to connect with had they not attended the selection day. So it was really, really good and useful. So I'm gonna also just look at our three fellows here. How did you feel about the selection day? What did you get out of it? Robert, because you were unmuted.
Yeah.
I'll pick on you.
One thing to say, at no point in the selection day do you revisit the application. I thought that was interesting. I thought I was going to have to defend the application I'd made, and you're right, Nishadi, that's already been done. The selection day is about activities that demonstrate how you work with people.
Indeed. I think there was an opportunity to sort of briefly just kind of talk about your proposal in a way only to find overlap with other people's ideas. Yeah, and so that was quite useful. So, that I think even for the BioFAIR Hub and the rest of the selection panel, it was nice to see that kind of the swap of ideas. And also quite nice to get feedback that said, I just really had no idea these people existed, who were kind of fighting the same battles as I was in my institution. So I think that is one of the best things to have come out of the fellowship, to meet kindred spirits and work together. So I'm glad, Robert, you felt that way. Was there anything else? I can see, I think it says no open questions, but we've got 10 more minutes. So if you did have any sort of last minute ideas, you can drop them in. If not, I suppose I always love giving time back. Do remember the application deadline is the 7th of August. Do remember you do need to contact someone in your organization to write a letter that says that you can apply for this and the host institution is happy to host the award and support you. Sometimes it can be a little tricky during the summer holidays to get those kinds of official documents done. But I just really also thank you. Just wanted to thank Jean-Marie, Robert, and Evan for giving up some time of your morning to come and join us. And thank you to Ed and Eva, who've been working behind the scenes to get this process up and running. There is one quick question which I'll take actually. Apart from the listed scientific domains, can we propose something else? Yes, you can. Please do. BioFAIR's remit runs through all of the life sciences. The only sort of caveat I'll add is if you are thinking of sensitive clinical data, this doesn't strictly fit the remit of BioFAIR. We do answer this on the website, unless, of course, you can find some really clever way of transferring the lessons that you have learned in that sort of sensitive domain and are able to show that it's applicable to areas outside of that are not sensitive. But besides that, yes, that sounds very exciting. I look forward to hearing of what that domain is. If that's all, I guess we can. Oh, Jean-Marie, yes.
No, yeah. I will go back to the scientific, scientific,
yes.
the medical part, because I was maybe unclear of what I was saying earlier on. Also, a lot of people doing sometimes medical data use public resources, and I think that is the one of the part of BioFAIR is, I said is, and Robert was indicated a few times, is what can you reuse, and the FAIR principle is about reusability. So I think there's a lot of public resources even for medical data that have been curated and anonymized, and I think that part I think is considered by BioFAIR because some of the if it's deposited in public repository that are publicly available, it could be potentially sometime like in our case we have used medical imaging data, but they have been deposited in public repository. That is, I think that is still in scope and is not where it's you have patient data that nobody can touch, because that's I would say it's a minefield that you don't want to go, but it's a
yes, you're absolutely right, Jean-Marie. Thank you for picking up on that. Yes, I mean, open medical data sets that do not have to live behind a trusted research environment, those sorts of things are all within scope. But if you are getting into the areas of TREs and extremely sensitive data, there are other organizations in the UK, such as HDR and DARE, that are specifically funded to look at these, and they can handle it much better. So that's the distinction. There's another quick question here about medical data work. Is data anonymization for FAIR open data sharing guidance or a workshop out of scope? I'm not too sure. Perhaps that's something that can come to us via email and we can have a little think and get back to you. I'm just not quite understanding the sort of broader context of that. It's very difficult for me to get into that. Brilliant. And the email to use, thank you, Ed, is opportunities@biofair.uk. So do send me that to our email and we'll have a little think. All right, brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you for joining us, and good luck with the rest of your application process. And we look forward to receiving them on the 7th of August.